Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me today. And before we get started, I need to show you my disclaimer. Trading involves the risk of loss. This presentation is for educational purposes only and should not be solely relied upon as a recommendation or invitation to enter into a particular transaction or to apply a particular trading strategy. It is also not intended to be a substitute for professional counseling, therapy, or medical treatment, nor is it intended to diagnose or treat any psychological condition. You should not engage in trading unless you understand the nature of the relevant markets, the rules and application of these rules to the strategy or strategies you are trading, the products, and the full extent of your exposure to risk of financial loss. The information contained in this presentation has been prepared without taking into account the objectives, financial situations, or needs of any particular client, and because of that, the attendee should, before acting on any information, consider the appropriateness of the information having regard to their personal objectives, financial situation, and needs, and must seek professional advice. By attending this presentation, you do so at your own will, and in doing so, waive liability to any claims against the host, presenter, and any associated organizations and people. Great, now that we've got that out of the way, welcome to our webinar tonight on how to be a high-performance trader. And I really love this topic because everybody talks about high performance, but it's really clearly defined on what it actually means to be a high-performance trader. So let's talk high performance. Let's talk how do we access the greatest part of ourselves so that we can have significant output, not only in trading, but so that we can have significant output in all areas of life, in our health, in our relationships, in our trading, of course, and also in our other areas of career. And if we have a clear understanding of what it means to be a high performer, then we can create a benchmark, an action steps, milestones, a plan on how to actually get there. Because, high performance is a way of life, a lifestyle. It's not something that you do once in a while. And the age-old question is, are top traders born or made? Now, the interesting study that I found is a research paper from 2011 that found out that 40% of our behavior is genetic and 60% is learned. And this is why when you see these experiments, which are quite cruel actually, these experiments of twins who have been separated at birth and then they meet each other 20, 30, 40 years later, that's why they have very similar behavioral patterns or idiosyncrasies. The good news that 60% of our behavior is learned is that we can do anything that we want to and change our behavior. We can't really do anything about our talents, but we can achieve what we want to achieve by changing our behavior. And this is the reason why I personally believe that while not everyone can perform at the levels of a Linda Rushke or a Paul Tudor Jones, I personally believe everyone can become a profitable trader if they choose to. You all have me saying this favorite quote from my coach, Steve Ward, everyone knows what to do, it's doing what you know that makes the difference. And it's actually this one here. So everybody knows what to do, it's doing what you know that's the difference. And that's the hard part. And yet it's the very skill that sets the winner from the loser apart. Because again, trading is not rocket science. It's following your system, cut your losers, let your winners run. It's like losing weight. It's not rocket science unless you have a medical condition. It's eat half of what you would usually eat and double your, your exercise, and you're bound to lose weight. And yet, it's so incredibly difficult for most. Now, why is that so? Let's have a look at the success principle we do have. Now, in my opinion, this is where the secret to success lies. Many traders, when I ask them what they want to achieve with trading, they say they want to be able to give back to their parents. They want to take their family out on a flight around the world first class. They want to give back to the people that they love. But in order to give back to the people that we love, first we need to have something to give, right? In this case, in our industry, it's about money. In order to make that money, in order to have that money so that we can give what we want to give, we need to do certain things. As I said, we need to cut our losses, we need to let our profits run, we need to develop the skill, we need to do patience. So there's certain things, it's like gravity, that if you do them, you're bound to succeed. But the secret, and that's what not many talk about, is in your beingness, not in what you do. And when you look at Twitter, it's always, even social media and Facebook and YouTube videos, you have to do this, you have to do that. But unless you have resolved that what you have to do in your mind, meaning that you have the mindset that allows you to do that, in a company would be the company culture, for example, you will not be able to do what you know you must. So if you are not doing what you know you must, you need to look at your mindset. You need to look at your belief system, your value system. What standards do you have? What are your standards of excellence? And once you have defined that, then you know why some can succeed and others can't. Because the question is really, how come one person can get up at 5 in the morning, starting their day with a strong workout routine, whereas the other person starts the day with an egg and bacon breakfast at 8 a.m. and then they roll to work? How come one trader takes the losses as per their strategy and the other blows out their accounts over and over again? The word high performance is thrown around a lot in our industry, but what does it really mean? What are the components of a high performance mindset? And I tell you, they are all here in the being area, not in what we do. It is defined here in who you are as a person and who you need to become as a person. So what values do you need to develop? So for example, I used to think that you have to have money as the highest value, but now I understood after working with so many incredible traders. I'm so lucky to have the opportunity to work with incredible traders. So I found out that family needs to have the highest value, because if you have peace in your family and you have your family on board and they have your back, then you have the space to take care of your health. Healthy family, healthy health. I saw that a lot. When your health is taken care of, then you can focus on your trading career. Then you can do what needs to be done. And so if you look at the high components of the high performance mindset that we're going to look at today, it's mostly in this yellow box. Now, the question is also, how is the high performance, or how are the components of the high performance mindset applied in the heat of the moment when the markets are moving and you have to make split-second decisions? And why are million-dollar traders, or even just becoming profitable, is out of reach for the majority of traders? And I hope that after our session today that you will have a clear insight into why that is the case. Because this is what inspired me to hold this training for you, that I found that most traders really have no clue what it means to become a million-dollar trader, because they have never had to operate in a high-performance environment. They have no benchmarks and no definitions of being a high-performance trader, which means it is highly unlikely they will ever achieve it, because simply they don't know who they have to be and they don't know how to do it. Now, the essence of a high-performance trader is that, so these are areas that are actually identified by working with traders, right? So they can see things others can't. They're extreme visionaries. And how they have learned to see things others can't is because they look at the markets from different viewpoints. Or maybe they have one viewpoint now, how they look at the market, but in order to get to their strategy, they looked at the markets from very different angles and have arrived at their strategy by exploring different areas of expertise. Now, so they're visionaries. They are about, pushing through limits. The limits that they know, the lines become so blurred that they just push through it to find new limits that didn't even exist. And what makes them see things others can't is really a higher level of consciousness and strategic and logical thinking. So to be a high performer, you need to be able to see, do, and think things that others can't. In order to do that, you need to have certain traits. So one key trait is grit. But again, what does it mean as a high performance trader? You need to have grit. Like, we have heard that a lot. We have talked about resilience, but what does it really mean? Because grit is a quality that relates to resilience, and it's also a quality that relates to fulfillment. And people with high levels of grit experience high levels of fulfillment and happiness. And this is why, well, that's where it gets interesting. If you're looking at what grit is based on the context of trading and sports and health, it is the ability to suffer and to keep pushing and to push through the pain in the moments that matter, like when you need to take a loss. I saw the DAX before was trending down, and then suddenly a 40-point jump to the upside. So anyone who was short the DAX would have had this immense pain. And here's the question: in that very moment, now it matters. Do you take that loss, let it go, and look for the next opportunity? Or do you try to fight for it, hope that it turns around again? Yeah, so that's the real difference in life. When you look at life, people who succeed in life, they have had things happen to them. Everybody has their story of, challenges that they had, unfairness that has happened to them in childhood, but they feel the suffering and they push through it so that they can achieve their life goals. Whereas the other people in life, what do? They still have the same life goals. They still want to have a good life and freedom and time freedom and financial freedom. But what they do is they actually retreat. They are the ones who turn off the alarm in the morning and go for another snooze followed by a big breakfast. They are the ones who avoid pushing through the pain and taking their losses. And if you retreat, guess what happens? You don't actually get to experience the fulfillment of learning whatever it is you're actually trying to push through, or attaining the goal you're trying to push through for. If you retreat, you're the one who reaches for the pizza rather than for the salad. And that does not lead to fulfillment. So if you look at your life, how you do one thing, you do everything. And if you can't resist reaching for the pizza, if you have said to yourself you want to lose weight, then I doubt how you will be going in terms of taking your losses, unless you have an external risk manager or a trading manager who does that for you. But it's a very different story if you are someone who works in a trading environment, who works for a firm, than if you're a trader who is all alone at home. One example is, how do we deal with mistakes when they're being made? Are we justifying, explaining, complaining, blaming? How do we deal with our own performance when perhaps we are not performing at the highest level? Do we get frustrated, feel defeated, give up, or push through the pain and figure out what needs to be changed? How do we deal with it when we have been performing on the highest levels and we are in danger to burn out, but we are afraid to slow down because we are in a high-performance culture and we might lose our edge? How do we respond to these situations? Because that is the make or break of your achievements. How many traders have been doing so well, and then they just simply get tired, they get burnt out, and rather than going to bed and having a good sleep, they keep trading and they give it all back. So let's look at, when you're a normal trader, or even a losing trader, or even if you're someone who has never achieved much, how do you transform into a high performer? Where do you think it all starts? You might be surprised. It all starts with consciousness. The question is, how conscious are you in different areas of your life? Everything starts with consciousness: health, financial matters, relationships, consciousness on being honest with yourself, because high performance is a conversation around consciousness. If you want to improve any area of your life, where does it start with? Being aware of what needs to be changed, right? So being honest with yourself. When someone, for example, experiences a high level of dysfunction, which addiction can bring out, what is the first step that is required in order for change to take place? You have to admit that there is a problem, right? And that's why when you look at AA, People have to admit over and over again that there's a problem. Hi, my name is, and I am an alcoholic. And this is who I am, and this is what I'm going to change. And that's what we need to do in trading as well. We need to be real honest with ourselves and say, I do have a problem here. Something is not quite working. And be really honest and start looking at what needs to change. If you want to become a high performer, you have to become conscious of where your performance level is at. You need to know where your current benchmark is, and you need to know where your next benchmark and milestone is, and which action steps to take to get there. So rather than trying to achieve perfection and achieving your goal, just look at what's the next step, what's the next step, what's the next step, one step at a time. Now, what is really interesting is, let's have a look at what is the enemy of high performance. And that leads us to the second point here, stress management. Many traders or many people think that the enemy of high performance is actually the ego, but you will be surprised. It's not ego. Ego is quite common in high performance. It is the health of the ego that would be in question. Do you have a healthy ego that you display and balance with humility? Or is your ego so full of itself that it can't see any wrong? That there is no balance? Or do you have the ability to be able to assert yourself even when you're unsure, but be open and vulnerable to the fact that you might be wrong? You still stand behind the things that are important to you. Does this make sense? So the ego is not the enemy here. What is the enemy of high performance? The enemy of high performance is actually stress. Who would have thought? Why? Because stress is the biggest killer to generating profits. When you experience stress, your body is triggered into fight or flight. And what is typically something that accompanies stress? Just go back to the last time when you were stressed. Just think about it. What else was present in your body, in your mind when you were stressed? Who gets a little bit emotional? It's completely normal, right? So it's the emotion. Often when traders come to me and they say they want to work on their emotions, what it often comes down to is that they're actually stressed. And that's what's causing the emotions. So if you want to work on your emotions, most of the time working on the emotions itself is not where the solution lies, because that's just a symptom. The root cause of the emotions, often, not always, is stress. And emotions often come up in the context of stress. You know, when you're driving to work and you're stuck in traffic, or when you haven't had much sleep because the kids were sick, or when you had to fight with your spouse, or when you had a change in your work environment. All this is emotional stress. So people who are highly stressed are more emotional unless you're a high performer, and I will explain in a minute. So if your emotions impact your trading negatively, the answer is not to suppress them. The answer is to check in with yourself, to get conscious of where you're stressed, what sort of stress you're dealing with, financial stress, relationship stress, family stress, health. That is where you need to work on, and it flows through to your emotional well-being. So when I work with my traders, they actually have to do a well-being test, and you don't know how many traders are extremely stressed and they don't even know it. What we need to understand is that high performers aren't immune to stress. They experience stress just like everyone else, but they process stress differently. And what they also do is they take care of their well-being, so much so that they have an extremely high level of resilience. Yeah, so they have an extremely high level of being able to deal with stress before they crack. Now, I remember Federer was playing, and it was the Wimbledon finals, and one of the commentators said, "Oh, I wonder if he's going to crack under the pressure." And that's the thing with tennis players like Federer, Nadal, Serena Williams. Pressure to a superstar, that's not pressure. It's the opportunity to perform. That's what they do best, right? That's what they live for. That's what they fight for. That's what they train for. And this is what we need to understand. Stress is not something that we are going to avoid as a high performer. The difference is when you get stressed, do you go into flight, want to curl up into fetal position and hide from the world? Or do you get to a fighting spirit and take on the challenge? You go, you do like grit, like grrr. And so this is really what I do when I need grit, because I'm not naturally someone who has grit. I do that to myself. I'm like, grrr, like that vibration is really creating kind of like a fighting spirit in you. And when you look at martial artists, they do the key up, right? So taekwondo fighters, they do the key up. Karate fighters, they do the key up. And so the key up is like the initial, like the war cry almost. So do that. Create this grit in yourself. So you can see it is not stress itself. That is the enemy of high performance. It's your relationship with it, of course. How do you relate to stress, both at a psychological level and mentally? How do you relate to stress? When you feel stress, what are the loops that you run? Do you go into thinking the same thing over and over again? Do you have a stress experience physically? What happens in your body? Do you stop breathing? Do you tighten up? There's so many things that happen in your body when you experience stress. What the enemy is your inability to regulate the stress. And in order to regulate the stress, of course, you need to regulate your emotions. And this is why I love the emotional pendulum so much, because in order to regulate our emotions, we need to look at a spectrum of emotions. So there are basically 8 basic emotions, but I prefer to work with emotions in terms of a spectrum based on the chart. So from panic to euphoria, and we could actually even plot the stock market over this little photo. That would be something, because this is really what the markets go through, right? Now the spectrum of emotions is, we got high positive and we got low negative emotions here. You've got the positive part of the spectrum, that's all this here, and the negative part of the spectrum. You've got the positive part of the spectrum that helps you to be happy. And in order for you to be euphoric and like really happy and only see happiness, what does your brain actually have to do? It needs to delete everything that's here on this side. In order for you to maintain a really highly positive outlook, you have to focus on one side of the equation and filter out all the information, delete all the information on the other side. Now, in order for you to experience only stress and negative emotions, you have to start only focusing on the negative emotions and literally delete and stop thinking about everything positive in your life. And that's when you get really depressed and upset. And so you literally have to force yourself and filter out everything that you're happy about in your life when you're depressed. And so one way to improve your depression is to look at how can I feel just a little bit better, just a little bit better, just a little bit better, and reach for some feelings that are on this side of the equation. By virtue of our brain, when we experience an emotion or when we experience stress, our brain starts to filter information differently. When we go from processing stress and emotion together, the brain's capacity to process information goes from 2,000 bits per second, 2,000 bits of information per second, I should say, down to 120 bits of information. So when you are stressed, you lose a massive amount of consciousness, a massive amount of awareness, a massive amount of ability to process what's going on your screen, in your charts, with your strategy. And that really, really, really stuffs your brain up. And that's the thing. That's why traders find it so hard to do what they need to do, because now they're in this tunnel vision and they can't see the big picture anymore. Remember how I said high performance, they're like big picture people and they see different viewpoints? And I found most traders who can't take their losses, they focus on detail, they focus on the small picture because they're so stressed. It's like tunnel vision. They can't see anything else anymore. Whereas the high performers, they see the big picture. They know they have to win the war and not the battle. And this is really the stark contrast, that you lose those massive amounts of consciousness. And when you're aware that you lose those massive amounts of consciousness, then in that also lies the cure. So if you now go one step further and understand that stress is not the problem, it's our inability to deal with stress, because I don't know about you guys, but growing up, I did not learn how to deal with stress. And yes, I have heard of meditation and all the spiritual practice, but really I did not understand what it means and why it is so important. Now, that is not an excuse because, it doesn't matter how old you are, you can still learn how to deal with stress once you have the awareness for it. And now, what do you notice about individuals who compete on a very high level, like athletes? I mean, look at Tiger Woods, how he had his comeback. It's just amazing, right? So most athletes and most super successful traders, they're very, very focused. And this is one thing that Linda Rushke, for example, always stresses. She's like, you need to be focused, turn off your TV, turn off Twitter, don't answer your emails, don't have your phone in the office, just focus, focus, focus. And also, again, I don't know about you guys, but I find that watching TV and there is an interruption every 20 minutes or sometimes even every 5 minutes with advertisements, that our ability to focus has diminished a lot. So what I also do is I practice and train my focus. One of the things that I do is I imagine a clock on the wall and I count backwards from 100 to 1. And when I get stuck, when my thoughts wander, I have to start again. And I have to admit, I haven't managed to get to 1 as yet. I'm stuck at 74, but I will get there. But it's not the point, it's not about getting to 1 or not. The point is really just training your brain to focus. And I do a lot of brain training as well, like Brain HQ is my favorite. I just love these guys. They do a lot of brain training as well, or brain research as well. So yeah, now that is the very thing with athletes. They stay focused, calm, and centered. And that is so appealing in a high performance environment. And this is the difference between someone who can play tennis at Wimbledon level and someone who is just struggling to play C-grade regional. This is the difference between someone who is a top 1% trader and someone who is barely breaking even. Of course, all that is coming down to their skill level, and their skill level is determined by what they actually see. Without the skill, of course, we know that you will not become a top 1% trader. But in order to get that level of skill, you need to have a clear mind. You need to have a certain level of confidence and a certain level of high awareness, high consciousness, so that you can see the big picture. You can also think multidimensional. This is what I found with high performance. They think multidimensional. It's so interesting. They understand how each market is interrelated. So, for example, again, with Linda Rushke, whilst she is trading purely technical, she has a clear understanding of how all the markets are interrelated, the seasonal behaviors, everything. So it doesn't matter even if you trade just candlestick patterns, it is still very useful to understand the big picture relationships. Now, you see, your ability to see what is in front of you, your ability to operate in the present, because that's really what it means. Not being worried about the future or dreaming about the future and already counting the dollars in your bank. It is not about worrying about the past and having the regret from the past. Having high level of consciousness and awareness gives you the ability to be really present. And when you're present, that is the feeling of being in the zone. When you don't think about the past or worry about the future anymore, that is being in the zone. And that will be determined by how much stress and how much emotion you're actually experiencing on a moment-to-moment basis. So you see, one of the things that gives the high performer the advantage in high-pressure situations is that they regulate stress to such a high degree that they allow their awareness and consciousness to stay completely open. And again, if you look at tennis players, right, they do have their moment of having a hissy fit, right, a moment of throwing a tennis racket, or the moment of um, talking to themselves, but then they are able to just regulate again and to collect and start again. Yeah, it's really interesting to see. And then as a result, when you have an expanded level of consciousness, you have also an expanded level of awareness, that opens for you the doors to more choice, more options, more possibilities. And with that come the opportunities. So it doesn't really matter if you make mistakes in the market. So many traders, they're focused on not making mistakes. And it's not possible, people. It's really not possible. So many traders say to me, I want to have 100% level of following my system. Well, unless you're superhuman, it's not possible. The best traders in the world are struggling with this. And you see, that's really good news, because they're still the best traders in the world, even though they're struggling with having 100% success rate in following the system. So you can see that is really focusing on something that has no bearing on your success at all. See, to me, consciousness isn't just about becoming more aware or just for the sake of being more aware, although it's nice to be more aware. So that's, what mindfulness meditation is really helpful with. To me, consciousness and awareness from a practical perspective is really important, because it gives me more options. It gives me more choice of how to behave and how to respond in a situation. It gives me the ability to get the slightest inkling that something is out of whack, that I'm not on top of my game, that the market has changed in some way, shape, or form, and be able to be proactive instead of needing to clean up the mess that I created because I wasn't aware. To me, every decision we make matters. But what we need to understand is the quality of the decisions we make every day that determine the outcome we get. Yeah. So let's look at, for example, what Linda Rushke in her book Trading Sardines describes, and it's really interesting. So what happened was, she was in this bean trade and she was long and it didn't work out. So she wanted to close the trade, and who knows what happened. Her assistant maybe did an error, the broker maybe did an error, whatever it was, they doubled up rather than closing out the position. And they doubled up where the arrow is here. And so you can see what happened next. It just collapsed. And she was long 2 positions. So what happened? 80% of the year's profits just went. She just lost it in one moment. And so the thing is, of course, you feel angry and you feel all the feelings that you have, but then it comes down to, are you able to collect your thoughts? And what she thought to herself was, I have a great team behind me, and it's still beginning of the month. And if I make $200,000 profits per day, then I will have caught up on the losses. And guess what? She's like, I just need to batten down the hatches and focus and just do my thing. And that's what she did, just focusing, not looking at her P&L. And so she actually ended up 3% in profit after that that crazy drawdown. And I love this saying. I love what she wrote in the book. Don't look back, only move forward. So the feet keep marching forward and the feelings get left behind in the dust. And a lot what I've learned about how to deal with stress and how to deal with challenging situations, I also learned from the book Trading Sardines, because Linda talks about her challenges in trading. And man, did she have challenges. It's just the normal stuff that life throws at us, illness, divorce, loved ones dying, all these things that normal people experience, super successful traders experience as well. And money is not the solution. They still have the same pain. The question is, how did they keep performing on that level, even in the face of those challenges? And so, it is really interesting. And I will share with you also, of course, how Linda and other really super successful traders deal with that. Now, dealing with stress. Of course, there is the well-being approach versus the pathological approach. And the thing is, most traders that I see, they come to me when it's too late, when they have blown their accounts, or when they're in a massive drawdown, or when they're close to giving up. And so this is the pathological approach. They're already sick. They have already done a lot of damage. And they thought they rather lose $5,000 than pay me for my coaching services and having them out of their mess, right? And then, of course, that never works. So the well-being approach is really, really important. And if you start using the well-being approach, then you don't need to worry about losing so much money, nor do you need to worry about paying anyone, because you have prepared yourself to be resilient and to be able to inoculate yourself from the stress. And this is, again, what you see all the athletes do. They have a nutrition coach, so they eat really, really healthy. They eat the food that is perfect for their body composition. I don't know if you knew that there's people who have naturally what we call a hot, and naturally they are cold. Others are naturally cold. So the people who are naturally cold, they need to eat hot food, and people who are naturally hot, they need to eat cold food. And you know that because your body is telling you. And that's a lot of Indian philosophy here, by the way. I love Indian philosophy when it comes to understanding your body and understanding how to best take care of your body. Now, the question is, how do you create physical resilience? Because physical resilience helps you with your psychological resilience, and your psychological resilience helps you with your financial resilience. And of course, the important thing is to start your morning with a routine. And Tony Robbins calls it priming. So you prime your day. And how I start my day is with a Tony Robbins priming routine. If you put in Tony Robbins priming into the internet, into Google, then you will find his 20-minute priming exercise. I cut mine down to 10 minutes. That's all I need, I find. 20 minutes, I get bored. So 10 minutes is just perfect for me. It's breathing exercise, and I share with you later on some breathing exercises. It's being grateful, just being alive and being here and being healthy. We can be grateful for so many things. And it's also about thinking about the 3 top things that you're going to achieve or that I'm going to achieve throughout the day. Yeah, that's my morning routine. Toughness training, like the Wim Hof approach of having ice baths. Okay, I don't have ice baths, I have to admit. But I used to, in Germany, when you have the saunas, where you go into the sauna and then you go into the ice bath and then you go into the sauna again. And I don't know, Australia doesn't have that. It's really sad. The best saunas, of course, are in Finland and Sweden. So yeah, do toughness training, whatever it is. Mental toughness. So I do mental toughness by putting chocolates into the fridge and I'm not allowed to eat them. Let's say I buy chocolates on Monday and I'm only allowed to eat them on a Saturday. That's how I toughen up. There's many different ways. And of course, the physical toughening up, like doing sports. I mean, there has been so much research done how sports really positively influences your well-being and your ability to perform in trading. Fueling your body and your mind through really good nutrition. What I'm doing is the intermittent fasting, because again, they have found out that people who eat less live longer. They also have found out that you have much more energy, and I find that I'm much clearer in my mind. I have done several times 7 days fastings or 11 days once in Thailand. And it's the best ever. Afterwards, when you have finished your fasting, oh my God, you're so aware. It's like you have like 10 million more sensors. It's just amazing. And so do that once a year at least, and clean your body and clean your mind. Now, seek out challenges. I always used to hide from challenges because I was afraid of challenges. And then when I realized that this is not really getting me ahead in life, I started seeking out challenges. I looked at every area of my life. Where do I have a challenge? And then I would find out, how do I deal with my challenge? How do I overcome this challenge? Things that are stuffed up and I was afraid to face. I would then talk to my coach and say, how do I deal with this? What do I do? And we would together find out a way on how to deal with it. And now the more challenges I seek out, the more tools and insights and understandings and strategies I have to deal with challenges. And the more I have, the more tools, the bigger my toolbox, the more confident I feel in myself, the more certainty I have about myself, and the more I trust myself, because now I know whatever life throws at me, I will find a way. Yeah. Before I was so afraid of life because I didn't know how to deal with it. I was afraid of so many things. Now I know I don't need to be afraid. There's always a way. That's one of my beliefs. There's always a solution. Someone out there knows what to do because they have been in my situation for sure. I'm not unique. Yeah, so learn how to deal with challenges proactively as well. Don't leave your text to the last minute. Don't, and if you leave your text to the last minute, if you're this kind of person, then take a good look. There's a reason for it. Why do you avoid this? Why do you avoid what's uncomfortable or what's unfamiliar? Do you do the same behavior in your trading? If you do, it's about your beingness, about your mindset. What are your standards and expectations of yourself? Yeah. There's so much to work and so much to discover. It all comes down to consciousness and awareness. Can you see that now? Another way of how I deal with stress is I make sure that I take care of my wheel of life. Now, this is something that how I put my wheel of life together. For you, it might be different. So, I don't have kids, so I don't need to worry too much about family in terms of having my own family. So that's not a big part for me in my wheel of life. For you, it might be different because you have family, your significant relationship, your career and your business, your finances and your wealth, your health and your well-being, your learning, growth, creativity, hobbies, family and friends. Every day I do something in each area of my life. And obviously career and business comes first during the week. My finances and my wealth, every day I have to take care of that part. Every day I have to do something for my health and well-being. So for my health, I eat so I'm really into, and bless my mom, like she's amazing because she does a lot of research into natural remedies and Ayurvedic medicine and so on. And so she is now into these mushrooms. Quadriceps is one that I'm using. So I have a little bit of quadriceps, which is one of those mushrooms, and they have like amazing health benefits, and they make you fit and alert, and I just feel so good with it. So I start my day with a big glass of water. It has ginger in it and a little bit of lemon. And then I have a coffee. I just love my coffee in the morning, and I'm very aware it's not the best to start my coffee so early, but that's one of the things that I'm not willing to give up. So, and I do that with full consciousness and full awareness. And then after an hour after I've digested the coffee, I have a little bit of yogurt with my quadriceps and flat, what's the name again? Leinsamenöl. I remember the German word, but not the English word. How bad is that? Flaxseed oil, that's the one. So a little bit of flaxseed oil, that's what I then have. Then 2 hours later, I have eggs or just something more like nutritious with proteins. And then after that, I have a little bit of turmeric in hot water and lemon juice and black pepper. Then I have another meal, and I usually try to stop eating at about 3 o'clock. I use the word try with volition because depending on how my coaching sessions are organized, I can't always do that. Deck starts at 4 o'clock in the afternoon at the moment, and I usually don't eat after 4. So my thing is at 4 o'clock I stop eating, and I only start eating like late in the morning again. And that feels really, really good. It was challenging at the beginning, but yeah. So This is how I also make myself so much more resilient against stress, because what do we usually do when we have stress? We eat, right? We comfort eat. Now I can't comfort eat. Now I need to deal with my stuff. And so another way of dealing with stress is, of course, breathing. So you need to be aware that you have been triggered emotionally when you're stressed. And every time you get triggered, you're immediately in the past, by the way, not in the present. And from that place, from being in the past, I promise you, you make shitty trading decisions. So the first step is really to breathe, because the moment you get stressed, as I said before, you stop breathing, and that's really, really, really working against you in terms of being able to use your full cognitive functions. It's the opposite. It actually gets you deeper into your emotions, because then your cognitive brain is being cut off, and you're fully in your emotional brain, in the amygdala. Now, do you think it would be fair to say that some people live in their stress and their emotional turmoil for so long, and that's just how they live, they don't even know the difference anymore? And you have this saying, if you if you have been in the sewage long enough, then you don't feel the shit anymore. You don't smell the shit anymore. And that's kind of how a lot of people experience stress. They are so stressed at work. Then they come home. Then they get stressed because the kids left the toys on the floor, or your spouse didn't do the dishes. Then they don't sleep well. And then they get to work again and feeling stressed. And so the fruit loop continues. And how on earth do you want to perform in your trading when your house is so messy? I'm talking about your emotional house. And often when the emotional house is messy, we know that the environment is messy too, right? So if you're stressed all the time, how do you know when you're not stressed? You wouldn't have a benchmark for not being stressed as well. Yeah, so the goal here is to become more aware of what your baseline is and what does it feel like not to be stressed. Because when you know what it feels like not to be stressed, then it is going to be a lot easier for you to identify where you're at on the spectrum of stress from, let's say, 0 to 10. And then you can say, okay, so I'm feeling really stressed. Where in my area of life do I feel stress? And now what can I do in order to clean it up? Now, part of having this awareness, of course, once again, is the ability to breathe. Now, I love Tony Robbins breathing, and I also love, so Tony Robbins uses a lot of yogic breathing anyway. I love a lot of the yogic breathing from yoga. And one of my favorite is the learning how to breathe. And that's what I did at, learned from Tony Robbins at Date with Destiny. So you breathe in 4, you hold for 4, and you breathe out 5. And then you breathe in 4, you hold for 4, and then you breathe out 6. 6. And then you breathe in 4, you hold for 4, you breathe out 7. So counts, I mean. So let's do that. So breathe in, 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold your breath, 1, 2, 3, 4, and breathe out, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, so that's what I mean. That's what I do every morning until we get to 8. So we breathe in, 1, 2, 3, 4. We hold breath, 1, 2, 3, 4. We breathe out, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now you can also start with a variety of breathing in 4, holding for 5, breathing out 5, breathing in 4, holding for 5, 6, breathing out 6. So you can do really different variations of what serves you. But first, let's understand why is it so important to breathe. Because it resets our automatic nervous system. When you experience stress, what do you think is actually activated? Your automatic nervous system, that's the fight or flight. You have some sort of stimulus in the brain through the nervous system, which is a network of neurons based on past experiences that determines what this means and activates a response. So by breathing and forcing blood into our lungs, we are actually resetting the autonomous nervous system. Because if we don't, when you're stressed, the visceral sac around all of your major organs constricts, and it squeezes blood out of all the major organs and pumps blood into all the major extremities so that you can fight or flight. And that's why when you breathe, you force the blood into your lungs, which we do by holding the breath, we are actually resetting. And that's why a lot of people who do that exercise, they actually get really, really dizzy. I remember at the beginning, I would get so dizzy. It wasn't funny. So, but that's a really good sign if you get dizzy. That tells you that there's something for you to work on, and how important it is to really, really bring a lot of oxygen into your body. And I actually know some people who also go to the oxygen chamber, which I haven't experienced this yet, so I'm keen to try that out as well. Yeah, so, the beautiful part is, if you think about what is the autonomic nervous system actually connected to, it's directly connected to your immune system. So the more your automatic system is triggered, the autonomic system is triggered, the more your immune system is compromised. And that's why sometimes people get sick when they're stressed. There's so many reasons for you to learn how to do that. It's not funny, because the more you learn how to regulate stress, the more conscious you are. The more conscious you are, the better decisions you will make in your trading, because you have more clarity, and your mind is not clouded through the emotions, right? So if you don't manage the stimulus, then what happens is you breathe and you get nice and comfortable again. But every time you get exposed to that stimulus again, you start that cycle again. So that's why breathing on its own is not enough. You really need to work on the stimulus as well, the thing that actually triggers the stress response. One of those is, for example, reframing. So how would it be if you could say, you know what, I'm actually going to choose that the stimulus means something different to me. Emotions are a form of alcohol almost, they intoxicate us. And that's when we make those bad trading decisions, because who here has ever been intoxicated and done some really stupid things? I know I have. So you have to imagine, when you're in stress, when you're highly excited, or when you're highly depressed, that is like you're on drugs or intoxicated. And that's why it's so important that you learn to regulate, that you learn to balance your stress out, because in the middle of that pendulum, that's where your power lies. And it's the same, how many times, I did have a really good day. I come home and I'm so, wow, my day is going so well. Today I'm going to make $1,000 in my trading, because I'm just on a roll here. And because I was on the other extreme, so I was on, let me show you, I was on the euphoric side of the pendulum, where I did not think about the dangers and my risk management, I would lose money straight away, because I would filter out everything that's negative. Yeah, so that's why emotions, that can be so highly addictive, and also can be like alcohol. And it's the same when we are on this side, on the panic side of the emotions, because they also intoxicate us and then narrow our vision as much as the euphoria side. So again, our goal is not to avoid emotions, but to not play at the extremes, because the power is here. That's where you're not void of stress, but you have the tools to regulate it, like a remote control. And so one way of reframing is, let's say you made a bad trade, and ask yourself, what is the benefit of this? And of course, our initial response is, there is no benefit. And I know there is many drawbacks to it. But the thing is, have you ever had like really bad experience, and you dreaded it, and you were upset about it? Maybe a breakup with someone. And then 6 months later, you're like, oh my God, that's the best thing that ever happened to me. I always say, when something bad happens, and 6 months later it's the best thing that ever happened to you, it's because you made it the best thing It's not because it magically became the bad thing. It's because you were committed to make it the best thing. Maybe consciously, maybe unconsciously. Maybe it's the standard that you gave yourself. Yeah. So instead of having to wait for 6 months to get that hindsight, why not getting it now? And that's what we call reframing. Because if you can bring in hindsight in now, guess what happens to the stress? It starts to dissolve. Yeah, so I remember Serena Williams on the court, like she has millions of people watching her. And do you think she goes like, oh, fuck, I hate those freaking finals? She's like, no, yeah, fuck yeah, let me show you how this is done. And she's like, she's got the fighting spirit out. And that's what you can do as well. And I also remember Serena Williams after she had her baby. She was, I think the Australian Open was her first tennis match, and she didn't do well. And the superstar that she is, she just said calmly, I have a lot of work to do. I did not perform at the level that I know I'm capable of. Baby or not baby, doesn't matter. I did not perform well. I have to go back with my team, figure out what didn't work, and then have to improve what I need to improve. Right? So, yeah, find out how you can reframe it. And I know initially it's always like there's nothing good about losing so much money, but I promise you, if you look and if you're committed, then you will find something. And then you get invigorated again to take charge of your life and to build a new life and to never ever put up with that kind of crap ever again, right? Whatever it is for you. Now let's have a look at how to regulate your emotions. But in order to explain to you how to regulate your emotions, we need to first understand how that works. So today, so in this one, I'm going to explain to you the difference between emotions and feelings. And some people, some traders come back to me and say, no, it should be the other way around, it should be feelings and emotions. You know what? It doesn't matter. It's about the concept, not the words, okay? Now, what happens is you have a trigger, right? Something happens, something triggers you. You have an emotional reaction. What is an emotional reaction? It's nothing but a chemical reaction in your body. And that's why you don't have control over your emotional reactions. That's why you don't have control over how you feel about something initially. Now, the feeling brain, the amygdala, is fully lit up if you were to do MRI scans. And the thinking brain, the cognitive part of the brain, is completely closed for business. It's dark, doors are shut. Then the chemicals dissolve in your body and you get access to your cognitive thinking, to your thinking brain again. And you start giving this thing a meaning. And now, because you gave it a meaning, that triggers a feeling in your body, that triggers a feeling how you feel about that thing. Let me give you an example. So a trigger could be the birth of your baby. The emotional reaction is a chemical reaction. There's nothing you can do. When that chemical reaction has dissipated, now you start thinking, oh my God, I'm a father, I'm a mother. Some would think, oh my God, I'm stuck, you know, I can never go to the movies again. And others would think, oh my God, this beautiful, beautiful bundle of joy and, you know, what I can experience and all the happy times and all the challenging times waiting for you. And that creates that feeling that you then associate with being a parent. Now, sometimes those feelings are, of course, not serving us. So when you have a big loss, of course, there's the emotional reaction of crap. You know, that's the emotional reaction that Linda had when she had this botched bean trade. It wasn't happy feelings, right? Happy emotions, happy chemicals, no. But once that emotional reaction, that chemicals dissolved in her body, the thinking brain kicked in. It's like, how can I solve this? What can I do to solve this? Some, they think only about the past. How the heck did I get myself into this mess? Others, they think about the future. How can I get myself out of this mess? How can I fix this? And that then creates either feelings of empowerment and in charge and taking action, or feelings of hopelessness and helplessness and fear. And these are the two ways you can go to, right? So the fear and the helplessness and hopelessness, or staying stuck in the past or creating a new future and having feelings of, I've got this, I'm going to find a way, of hopefulness and feeling empowered and curiosity. Now, before you decide which way to go, you need to acknowledge what you feel, what is going on for you. There's no point in saying, in feeling really bad and then overriding this and just ignoring it. Just, it's just as simple as saying, I notice I feel afraid. I notice I feel disappointed. I notice I feel defeated. Whatever it is, say, I notice, I feel. Now, don't say I feel, because then it has a much closer impact on your emotional reactions. Just say I notice, I feel. So you're once removed. Now let us go those two different paths, right? So we can go down here. And what happens is, when something happens, we reflect on the past. Oh my God. How did I get myself into this mess? So reflection is always thinking about the past and projecting the past into the future. And that then creates a mood. And a mood that creates the temperament that we live off. So mood is just something that is temporary, but when the mood stays for a longer period of time, that creates a temperament. Mr. Grumpy Pants. And in that mood, in that temperament, traders tend to repeat the past over and over and over again. Will I ever make it? I don't have what it takes. What's wrong with me? I just need to find out that one thing that I need to fix so that I can finally go and become successful. That's a temperament. That's the mantras that you keep telling yourself over and over and over again. And when you keep repeating the past, that's what I call the fruit loop. That's what Carol Dweck calls a fixed mindset. Yeah, repeating the past over and over again. Now let's have a look. Let's have a look. What's up here? So, growth mindset. What you do is, rather than reflecting on the past, you look at creating a new perspective. So that is, for example, the reframe. How can I look at what happened through different eyes and expand the boundary conditions of my thinking and have new learnings and new insights that will help me to have a new perception of myself, of life, of what I expect of myself, what I expect of others, of how others see me, whatever it is. That then creates new feelings. And that's when you're able to create a new future. Yeah, so that's the growth mindset. And the next webinar will be really on this area. I will go into detail of what all this means. Yeah, so now we are just scratching the surface level, but it's still enough information anyway. So I tried to put it into a mind map, but I somehow did not succeed. I don't know what it is with mind maps. But so I put it on my whiteboard, and yeah, so you can see that's the chain of events. That's the line in the sand. When you're here, you can now make a choice. Do I want to go into my growth mindset, or do I want to feel sorry for myself and repeat the past, stay in a fixed mindset? We call that above the line thinking and below the line thinking. Above the line thinking is anything that I'm reaching for that makes me feel a little bit better. Below the line thinking is when I keep spiraling down into feeling worse and worse and worse. Yeah, when I have those monkey mind thoughts that keep me pushing even deeper into the quicksand or the sewage, depending on where you feel you are. So what I also found with high performers is to have extreme high standards and expectations. And what the most underperformers have, they have none of that. They let themselves off the hook. They let everyone else off the hook as well. So what are high standards and expectations? Of course, they have strong work ethics. And for example, my friend Tony Sycamore from TechFX Traders, he has a report that he sends out 3 times a week. And you know what? Whatever happens, even if he's on holidays, he takes care of the kids as well. So even if the kids are sick, It doesn't matter even if he's sick, his report comes out every time on time. There is no excuse. Whereas I see others, they have excuses all the time. And I know how their trading is going. Oh, sorry, I couldn't send the report out in time because it's buffering, or because my kid is sick, or because I'm traveling. Tony, there's just never any excuse. The reports come out. You can really expect for him to have that high level of consciousness. And that's what I think enabled him to be a prop trader for Goldman Sachs for the last 8 years, until Dodd-Frank forced the office to be closed down. Because to survive for 8 years in a prop firm like Goldman Sachs, that's epic. It's really good. So high performers, they're also curious and coachable, and they're willing to receive tough feedback. And they have this belief that feedback is the breakfast of champion, as Jim Rohn said so beautifully. What I also found interesting, they have daily routines and rituals. So one of my hedge fund guys, he has a daily routine. He goes to the office at the same time. He does the same thing. He starts his computer. He goes to the kitchen. He gets him a coffee. He opens his diary, like everything. His desk is nice and clean and clear. It's just really interesting. They're always prepared, no matter what happens. Yeah, that's the difference. They're highly self-aware. Once again, they know their weaknesses and their strengths. And what I find remarkable with Linda Rushke, so she knows that she has a low level of attention to detail. So what does she do? She gets someone in. So she has someone who helps her, an assistant, to execute her trades for her, because she knows herself as someone who does trade execution errors. Yeah, so she focuses on what she is really good at. Again, they're lifelong learners. And what they do is, when they learn, is they don't really try to learn the content. So they don't want to know which trades you took. They want to know about, how did you think about the trades that you took? What's your thought process? And that's where the learning lies. Again, there's solution focus. They don't go into what did get me into that mess, what's wrong with me. They're like, how can I get out of this mess? How can I solve that? What is the solution that I want to create? What are the results that I want to create? How do I do that? And they're highly organized and methodological thinkers. Really, they work on their thinking. If you're not a good thinker, work on it, practice it. So if there's anything that you're not doing currently, no excuse, put it into place. It's not rocket science, right? And then what I also found with them is the power of team. So even though they trade alone, they don't trade with anyone else, they have an amazing team around them, a support team that's there, and who, people who understand how they feel and what they go through. Because trading is tough. And they're still human. They overtrade, they mismanage their trades, they get annoyed. And as I said, they still perform on the highest level. So every successful trader has a dark past, and every losing trader has a bright future, as I always like to say. And though no one can go back and make a brand new start, anyone can start from now and make a brand new end. And that's from Karl Barth. And trading is still the best job in the world. It is not easy, and we have to keep it simple. What I see most traders do is they're trying to keep it easy. And by trying to keep it easy, they overcomplicate things. It's just really crazy. So thank you very much for listening, and we open up for questions now.